The story begins with a man remembering the destroyed world he once lived in. He grew up fighting monsters to survive, and that routine of battles followed him throughout his life. 10 years passed quickly, and over time, he became strong enough to cut down any creature with just a sword. In one of his battles, a giant monster appeared before him. That imposing creature claimed that the world the man lived in had been completely ruined, and that it was useless to keep fighting for it. It also said that all of the warrior's talent was being wasted there, and because of that, invited him to become its sword, to serve it. But the man silently refused and charged into battle. However, the monster was far more powerful than expected. Even with all his skill, the warrior was severely struck, taking several hits until he fell to his knees, exhausted and wounded. At that moment, something caught his attention, a pendant hanging from the monster's necklace. Upon noticing that object, the warrior found strength for one last attack. With a precise strike, he managed to break the pendant, causing the monster to collapse and then explode. Despite the victory, the protagonist was drained. He lay on the ground, stared at the night sky, and, admiring the stars, thought it was a beautiful sight. The scene then shifts completely. Now, in front of a magical gate that blocked entry to ordinary people, a young man with black hair stood still. That was the entrance to the Yongsan district, in the city of So. The gate only allowed access to authorized heroes, and everyone knew that, but without hesitation, the boy delivered a powerful kick, destroying the magical barrier. The alarm went off immediately, alerting that an unregistered hero had entered the area. As the young man walked in, a few people approached, intrigued by his presence. The uniform he wore didn't resemble that of an official hero, nor even a porter, who usually wore more casual clothing. The backpack he carried also seemed odd for that environment. Because of that, some assumed he might be a naive porter who had been abandoned by the heroes he came in with. The group began to comment that if he had entered there just based on what he saw on television, it was a suicide mission. They recalled that to participate in a hunt inside a gate, one needed an official hero license and had to pass training tests. That gate, called Nansan, was ranked C. If the boy was just starting out, he should have looked for something weaker, like an F-rank gate. Despite the warnings, the young man didn't seem to care. That irritated some of the heroes, who labeled him as someone who completely ignored important warnings. They knew that place was nothing like what people saw on television or the internet, and that the boy would pay dearly for his recklessness. Suddenly, a monster appeared before him. But instead of panicking, the young man dodged the attack with impressive ease. His eyes glowed gold, and, as if time had never passed, he thought to himself that it had already been 10 years since his last battle. With a single punch, he crushed the monster's head, showing brutal strength. Then, he took the weapon the creature had been using, and extracted a low-grade magic stone from its body. Even though he used to disregard those stones in the past, he now kept them. In the next moment, two other monsters appeared behind him. Without wasting time, he threw the magic stone at one of them and blew up its head. It was clear the protagonist was direct and lethal. Even in the midst of chaos, his demeanor remained firm and determined, and his strength surpassed the norm. Meanwhile, outside the gate, the heroes wondered if that boy would end up dying in there. A woman expressed concern, but another hero questioned why she cared so much. He said that if the young man was an intruder, the control center agents would soon be on their way, and as long as he didn't provoke the monsters first, he might get out alive. But contrary to what they thought, the boy wasn't waiting to be rescued. He advanced alone, brutally defeating all the monsters he encountered along the way. After defeating all the surrounding monsters, Seo Dojin checked the items he had collected. He had gained 3 more magic stones, but quickly realized the haul wasn't as good as expected. So far, he had gathered 12 low-grade and 16 mid-low-grade stones, which wasn't much by his old standards. As he assessed his gains, agents from the gate's control center found him. They approached, demanding he show his hero registration card. They informed him that if he wasn't registered, he would have to leave the area immediately. But Dojin ignored the warning, turned his back, and began to walk away calmly. The agents insisted and threatened to handcuff him if he didn't cooperate. One of them grabbed his arm, explaining that if he resisted, he could suffer physical injury, and it would be better to resolve things peacefully at the control center. Without showing any concern, Dojin easily broke free and grabbed the agent's arm, warning him not to bother him again. That was enough for all the agents nearby to prepare for a fight. Observing their equipment, Dojin noticed one of them was using a grade 4 magic staff, something that might be useful against an orc. Even so, he remained calm and declared that this was his final warning. If they didn't want to get hurt, they should back off. However, the agents advanced, and in just a few moments, they were all defeated in a humiliating manner. Dojin's superiority was clear. With nearly all the men down, he approached the only agent still standing, and asked if registered heroes were allowed to remain there. The man replied yes, guests, as long as they didn't commit any crimes on site. Dojun then asked about the rift zones, recalling what he knew about them. These events had occurred all over the world, opening mysterious passageways through which unknown monsters emerged. The materials obtained from defeating them were used as new energy resources. Because of that, the government strictly controlled those locations. The monsters remained confined inside what were called gates, where the country had full control. Rift zones, however, which appeared outside these gates and were not entirely stable, remained as unknown and dangerous areas. Dojun wanted to know if no matter which gate he entered, he would always be pursued. The agent confirmed that he would. If a registered hero entered without permission, he would be automatically reported to the control center. Furthermore, the Hero Association wouldn't ignore such an infraction, especially since rift zones required more care than regular gates. Despite all that, Dojun didn't care. Instead of continuing to listen, he simply grabbed the agent's face and threw him away. As the man got up, he swore that next time he would kill Dojun. But the protagonist was already far off, lost in his memories. In the next moment, a flashback revealed the moment he lost consciousness. He felt as if he were being pulled into death. When he opened his eyes, he saw the body of a boy and heard a question. The young man with black hair introduced himself as Seo Dojun. At that moment, Dojun was also dying. He asked for his final wish to be granted, promising that if it was, he would disappear quietly. The blonde protagonist explained that he didn't want to die, but he also had no regrets. For 10 years, he had fought with all his heart, but in the end, he was betrayed by a comrade he trusted. His country was completely destroyed, his friends had died, and his family no longer existed. There was nothing left to be done. The real Dojun also seemed to be in the same hopeless state, but still expressed his wish for his grandmother and Eong to survive. The protagonist wanted to know what Dojun's final request was, but before he could get an answer, the scene changed again. Now, the setting was the former Gasan Digital Complex, which had become the Hero Complex, a place where monster byproduct trading had surpassed the activities of the old tech companies. Dojun walked into a specialty shop, interested in selling the magic stones he had collected. When he showed the items, the clerk was shocked by the quantity and the condition of the stones, which were still stained with blood. He asked Dojun to wait while he sorted them. After some time, the clerk returned with a report. There were 12 low-grade magic stones, 16 mid-low-grade ones, and 5 more that ranged between low and high level. Since the store's commission was 40%, the net amount Dojun would receive was 5.46 million won. Dojun had no interest in handing over 40% commission to that store. The clerk, trying to persuade him, explained that they usually charged 45% and were offering a lower rate out of courtesy. He also said that if Dojun wasn't satisfied, he could try selling the stones elsewhere. Without showing any concern, Dojun gathered his items and prepared to leave, but the clerk stopped him, saying he would have to pay for the sorting service. In addition, he charged for the coffee Dojun had drunk, and for the clean towel he used to wipe the blood off the stones. The total bill was 360,000 won, 300,000 for the appraisal, 10,000 for the coffee, and 50,000 for the towel. Dojun calmly said that he didn't have any money to pay for that. The clerk then tried to intimidate him, saying that some rank C heroes were supporting the store. Soon after, some men showed up to pressure the boy. However, the intimidation attempt didn't last even a second. Dojun quickly humiliated them, defeating everyone with ease. Without losing his composure, he declared that from that moment on, the store's commission would be only 1%. He also added that the clerk would handle all future transactions properly. After imposing his condition, he left the shop. Changing scenes, Dojun handed over all the money he had earned to his grandmother. The amount was so high that the two women in the house were shocked. To explain where it came from, Dojun said he had once lent money to a business friend who had since become successful. As a sign of gratitude, the friend had paid him back with interest. When the grandmother asked who the friend was, he replied that it was someone from the place where he grew up. The little girl who was present became ecstatic, saying they were rich now. At that moment, Dojun remembered the words of the real Seo Dojun, who, before disappearing, had made one last request. He wanted his grandmother and his sister Eong to live at least once in a safe place. The protagonist reflected that he didn't even have time to respond before waking up already inside Dojun's body. The safest house in Korea, according to current market prices, cost 110 billion won, and he didn't feel obligated to fulfill such a one-sided promise. Still, he believed that if his original power fully returned, that amount would be nothing. To him, the rifts, gates, and monsters of that world were weak. Everything there felt like child's play. After all, not even 1% of his true power had returned yet. That was when someone knocked on the door. Upon opening it, Dojun found two men demanding payment for a debt of 48 million won. They were loan sharks who had lent money to the real Dojun, with the first 5 million used to pay his grandmother's hospital bills, but the debt had multiplied over time. As they explained the debt, Dojun punched one of them so hard he flew across the room. He said he had already paid 9 million, and that he was the one who should be getting paid. The blonde man was stunned and asked if he was really Seo Dojin. In response, Dojin simply told him to inform the boss that they would meet soon, and with another powerful punch, he sent the man flying. The scene shifted again. Lee Yoon-young asked excitedly if she could buy a doll. Dojin replied that since they had already bought clothes, she could now choose whatever she wanted. He reflected that, by sharing memories with the original Dojin, he had ended up being influenced by them, losing some of his cold emotions. The real Dojin had always been kind to his younger sister, even though she was the daughter of another man. Soon after, Lee Yoon-young asked if she could also buy a stuffed bunny, and he said yes, she could choose whatever she liked. Later, while they were eating at a restaurant, a woman recognized Dojin and began to criticize him. She said that in those plain clothes, he didn't look like anything special. She wanted to know who was with him, and insinuated that the girl beside him had caused trouble for her mother. When she asked the girl's name and heard it was Lee Yoon-young, the woman made cruel remarks, saying that dressed like that, she looked as messy as her mother. These words deeply angered the protagonist. The woman even went so far as to ask if the girl knew the meaning of the word promiscuous, directly insulting a child. Furious, Dojin stood up and thought the woman was horrible, like an orc. He remembered that the real Dojin had grown up as an illegitimate child in extreme poverty. At the age of 7, after his mother's death, he was finally taken in by his biological father's family. Dojin lived another 10 years, being despised and discriminated against by everyone around him. After the birth of the son of his father's main wife, he was completely ignored in his own home. With no more place there, he ended up moving into his maternal grandmother's house. It was there that he met a half-sister for the first time. While reflecting on his own situation, he wondered what kind of treatment Dojin must have endured over the years. However, now everything would be different. Standing up, he said that they had lived together for 12 years, but that girl was still extremely unpleasant. Besides being ugly on the outside, she also had a horrible personality. She was so lacking in intelligence that she couldn't even keep up with her studies. At that moment, the girl's mother entered the room. When she noticed that Dojin was humiliating her daughter, the girl tried to complain, but her own mother rudely told her to shut her mouth. Then she turned to Dojin with a kind tone, asking if he was okay and saying it would be nice if he came home from time to time. But Dojin thought that all that kindness was just hypocrisy. After all, she had intimidated him for 12 years. Now she said that his father cared so much about him that it made her sick. Tired of listening, Dojin told her to get out of his way immediately. The woman then turned around and left, still surprised, wondering if that was really the same Dojin from before. Inside the car, the daughter, irritated, asked why her mother hadn't humiliated that bastard. The woman then turned to manager Lee and asked why Dojin was still alive. Lee explained that according to the reports, the man named Kang had indeed left Dojin at the gate as planned. The woman confirmed angrily that it was true and wondered how he could still be alive after that. The daughter, shocked, asked if her mother was really trying to kill Dojin. The woman then asked if the girl still liked him, which left her embarrassed. Trying to hide it, the girl quickly denied it. The mother then grabbed her daughter's face firmly and told her to be quiet. She said she would take care of everything and would definitely find a way to get rid of Dojin. The scene changed and showed the world they lived in. 10 years earlier, rift zones had appeared in various regions, and monsters started coming out of them, causing the deaths of thousands of people. The planet was thrown into absolute chaos. However, with the appearance of heroes, the situation began to improve. It was discovered that the monsters left behind magic stones, which began to be traded. These stones quickly replaced traditional energy sources, and countries invested everything they had to turn the rifts into gates. As a result, the entire global industrial structure began to revolve around the gates and the heroes. In other words, anyone who wanted to make money had to become a hero. Now determined, Dojin went to speak with the boss of a group of loan sharks. The man was furious, asking what he had done to his subordinates and how he had dared to hit one of them. Dojin calmly replied that, no matter how much he thought about it, he felt completely lost. The boss didn't understand what he meant by that. Dojin then explained that he had suffered many physical, mental, and material damages because of them, and now he believed it was only fair to be compensated for all of it. The boss realized that Dojin had completely changed. His personality was different, as if he had awakened inside a gate. Even so, the man still tried to assert himself, saying he had many subordinates who could put a rank D in his place, and that, since Dojin was just a rank D, he would be easy to deal with. Unshaken, Dojin told him to sit down because he wasn't finished talking. The henchmen moved in to attack him, but Dojin defeated them all quickly, making it clear he was no longer the same. He mentioned having heard rumors that the group forged identities and said he needed a perfect fake hero ID. He wanted the document ready by the next day, without any future risks. His display of power scared everyone in the room, and they began to wonder if he really was a rank D. Based on what he had shown, maybe he was even a rank B. The man named Hong Hee-ju, in panic, promised to process the request as quickly as possible, but Dojin pressed him, asking if it was Hong Hee-ju who had ordered his death. When the man hesitated to answer, Dojun gripped his shoulder tightly, forcing the truth out. That's when he admitted that Hong Heju had said Dojun would die, trying to pay off his debt, meaning he would die inside a gate. Dojun let the man go and asked if that was why they had left him trapped in that place. The man replied that he actually didn't know anything, and if Dojun died, they wouldn't make money either, so it didn't make sense for them to kill him directly. Dojun then said that the one who had taken him to the gate was Kang, and demanded that the man find information about him by the next day. As he left that place, Dojun was resolute. He knew there was still much to uncover in that world. The scene changed again. After everything, Dojun finally managed to get a fake rank B hero ID. Even so, he was annoyed. He felt that the man who gave him the document should have at least prepared a rank A ID, since the gate he intended to enter only allowed heroes of rank A or higher. Still, not caring about the rules, Dojun entered the gate anyway. Although that gate was classified as rank B, its actual difficulty was equivalent to that of a D rank gate, with no tunnel, which required the challenge to be completed alone. It was the kind of gate almost impossible to complete unless the hero was rank A, and if someone was really unlucky, they could end up facing hundreds of monsters alone in a dark tunnel. For Dojun, however, that kind of situation was exactly what he liked. Right after entering, he began fighting a black viper, a poisonous snake whose very presence caused paralysis. Even so, he defeated it with ease. However, the venom still affected his hand, and more snakes appeared shortly after. All of them were eliminated quickly. After inspecting the bodies of those monsters, he noticed that none of them contained magic stones. If that world worked like the old one, the chance of getting a magic stone from a black viper was only 3%. So, to get a decent amount, he would have to defeat hundreds of them. While walking through the dark tunnel, Dojun ended up encountering the boss of the snakes. He knew he had to end the fight as quickly as possible. When he threw the first punch, he noticed his attack had no effect. For the first time, one of his strikes had failed. The snake struck him violently, throwing his body against the tunnel wall. After trying another punch, he realized that, as he suspected, the monster's body structure was different. The creature's head had absurd resistance, and his physical attacks wouldn't work. That's when he found an abandoned sword on the ground. Without hesitation, he picked it up. He thought that it didn't matter how long that weapon had been there, because a sword changed depending on the person who wielded it. With determination, he charged at the snake, and using his sword, defeated it. However, the blade ended up breaking in the process. He then pulled out one of the creature's fangs and considered that if he refined it, it could be very useful in the future. After that, Dojun left the B rank gate. It was already nighttime. Even though it was a lower difficulty gate, the battle had taken quite some time. Now, recovering his strength was his priority. He felt relieved that his former acquaintances weren't there to see him in that state. The scene changed once again. In a shop, a man was selling magic stones. The same vendor as before explained that the sales commission was 40%. The client, a regular, complained that it was too high and asked if he could get a discount. The vendor replied that this was actually the cheapest commission on the market. He explained that even the base commission of official gate centers was 5%, and that with them, the process was organized and safe, representing guaranteed profit. The man accepted but asked why the vendor's face was so bruised. The vendor, visibly irritated, said that some lunatic had shown up earlier and beat up all his guards. The man commented that they had probably underestimated the intruder, relying only on the fact that they had C-rank guards. He explained that rank was just a classification used by the government, and that a combatant's true skill was something entirely different. As they talked, Dojun appeared again. The vendor, desperate, started shouting that this was the man who caused all the chaos. The client looked at Dojun, surprised by his appearance. He was tall, good-looking, and didn't look like someone capable of such destruction. Still, it was clear he was the one responsible. The man then said that if Dojun called himself a hero, he shouldn't go around attacking civilians, as that went against the principles of any true hero. The vendor believed that this client was a veteran, someone with at least 7 years of experience as a hero, since he seemed to know the field well. Dojun, without any patience for the situation, ordered him to get out of his way and mind his own business. His direct and threatening response surprised both of them. The man paused for a moment. He remembered something he had learned from years of experience. The leading cause of death among heroes wasn't monsters, but conflicts between heroes themselves. That was the kind of instinct only a veteran developed. He then gave up on the argument, claimed he was busy, and left, leaving the vendor confused by the sudden change in attitude. Meanwhile, Dojun dropped a heavy backpack on the counter, full of high-quality magic stones. The vendor, scared, wondered who that man really was. After calculating the total value of the load, he came to the impressive sum of 150 million wons. Even so, Dojun was frustrated. After an entire day of hunting, he still felt that amount wasn't enough. For him, this was just the beginning. Dojun stated that the proper commission was only 1%. With that, he should receive 148.5 million wons. The vendor, visibly nervous, explained that transactions above 100 million required approval from upper management. Without wasting time, Dojun ordered him to get that approval as fast as possible. The employee ran to speak to his boss, but before he could finish the call, Dojun grabbed the phone and demanded directly that the superior release the money. On the other end of the line, the boss tried to stay calm and asked for the phone to be handed back to the employee. However, Dojun threw the device with such force that it went through the wall. The last thing heard on the call was the boss's voice, ordering that the money be given to that lunatic immediately. With the payment secured, Dojun left the store carrying his money, saying that he'd be doing more business with them soon. 10 minutes later, the store manager arrived, furious, asking why they weren't answering the phone. The vendor, visibly shaken and depressed, said he wanted to give up everything. The manager then noticed that the phone was completely destroyed. Without delay, he called a woman named Ju Yan, asking her to come to the store as soon as possible. Meanwhile, on the streets, Ju Yan was walking calmly but drew attention wherever she went. Everyone was impressed by her presence. Upon entering the store, the vendor was shocked. That woman was Korea's 4th S-rank hero. He also remembered hearing that she was the manager's niece. But why had she come personally? Ju Yan explained that she was there because of a hero who had forced a magic stone transaction. Her uncle had a headache and asked her to take care of it. She then began gathering information about Dojun, the man involved in the incident. The scene changed. Dojun was at home, meditating. He reflected on the fact that he had hunted all day and still earned only about 100 million wons. He knew that soon, he would have to face an S-rank gate completely alone. To do that, recovering his former strength was essential. However, unlike his previous world, the mana in the atmosphere here was extremely scarce. Even if he collected mana every day for the next 3 years, it still wouldn't be enough. Having good equipment would help a lot. However, even weapons considered trash in that world cost hundreds of millions here. Suddenly, Dojun heard some commotion. He found Yu and Yang, who were distressed and wanted to enter a place as soon as possible. Right after that, everything began to shake as if it were an earthquake. But Dojun knew it wasn't just a tremor. He immediately realized that a new rift had opened. He warned the girls not to leave the room because it was dangerous, and then jumped directly into the newly opened rift. The scene changed again. At the Metropolitan Hero Association, an alarm sounded. A new rift had been detected. When checking the map, they identified that the closest guild was the White Lion Guild, so they requested immediate contact. They also began dispatching all heroes near the area. One of the leaders asked for the exact location of the rift, and was informed that it had appeared in the backyard of an ordinary house. This complicated the situation. If a civilian without a hero license entered the rift first, no one else could enter until that person exited. And if that person died inside, a monster wave would occur for 10 full days, affecting the entire rift zone. Panicking, they checked the records and discovered that someone had already entered. His name was Dojun, the resident of the house where the rift had opened. Upon checking his data, they realized that Dojun wasn't a registered hero. Based on this, they calculated the chances of him dying inside the rift. The probability was 99.9%, which left everyone there in despair over the possibility of an imminent catastrophe. Meanwhile, a man was talking to Dojun's stepmother, informing her that it was very likely he had awakened powers during the previous gate. The woman reacted angrily. She was frustrated with the situation and said it would have been better if she had killed Dojun herself before all this happened. She then ordered the section chief to send a clear message to Kang. If he couldn't kill Dojun, she would make him pay 10 times more than what had been agreed. The man replied that perhaps there was no need to contact Kang just yet. A new rift had appeared in Mappo, right inside Dojun's house, and it had been confirmed that he had entered it. The stepmother then concluded that she would probably never see that bastard again. Finally, she asked to be notified immediately if his death was confirmed on television. Inside the rift, Dojun was struggling to believe what he saw. It was the Petishua Forest, a place he used to visit when he was younger. Everything was exactly as he remembered. The environment was rich in mana, and even the shape of the sky and clouds looked the same. If he followed that path, he knew he would find the world tree, and that was exactly what happened. Before him stood an ancient spiritual tree that controlled the purest flow of mana. In the previous world, the destruction of that place had begun precisely when that tree was burned. That disrupted the natural flow of mana and led the planet to ruin. Dojun didn't understand why the tree was still intact there, but he felt relieved. He knew he could use it to recover all his lost mana. He settled near the tree and began to meditate deeply. Days passed. He was so focused on breathing and circulating energy that he forgot to eat and drink for 10 whole days. It was in that state that strange creatures began to approach. Dojun recognized them. They were the same monsters that, in the past, had destroyed the world tree. Wishing he had a weapon with a water attribute, he lamented his current limitations. Even so, he decided that this time, he would crush them all without mercy. He unleashed his mana toward the monsters using an old technique he called mana throw, a way of condensing accumulated energy and making it explode like an impact. It had been a long time since he had released such an intense amount of mana. The monsters attacked, but Dojin was able to defend himself with ease. Determined to protect the world tree, he continued fighting and destroyed the enemies one by one. During the battle, various magic stones began to drop from their bodies. He knew that, with luck, he might obtain something valuable, the inextinguishable spark, a rare item capable of altering his own mana attribute. After defeating all the enemies, he finally got what he wanted. When he squeezed that special stone, it turned into a living flame. He realized that although he wanted to keep absorbing mana from the world tree, his current body wasn't strong enough to handle more. The best option at that moment was to absorb the spark, allowing his mana to gain the fire attribute. In the past, this kind of absorption was almost automatic, but now, it took Dojin up to 10 minutes to fuse a single spark with his body. Looking around, he saw dozens of them on the ground. He decided he would absorb as many as he could. Meanwhile, outside the rift, many people were watching the site where it had appeared, Dojin's house. A man named Bang Seon-gu expressed his irritation, wondering why that bastard had done such a thing. Another man, Kim Hyunwoo, explained that Dojin did it to save his younger sister. He had heard rumors that one could awaken by entering a rift zone, so he jumped in without thinking twice. A third person asked what the guild leader had decided to do. Bang Seon-gu replied that, following the manual, the order was to just wait for the wave. Reports showed that similar rifts had appeared simultaneously in the United States, China, the United Kingdom, Turkey, and Switzerland. Even so, local leaders had managed to contain the situation quickly. It was the first time something of that scale happened on Korean territory. Bang Seon-gu was furious, believing it was all Dojin's fault. He promised that when Dojin came out of the rift, he'd punch him in the face. The scene changed, and it was revealed that 28 days had already passed since the rift opened. The Hero Association declared a level 1 monster wave alert, the highest level, because if the civilian who entered did not return within 2 days, a monster invasion would spread throughout the city. Elsewhere, a man was watching the news on television. He wondered if the person who had entered the rift was really Dojin. His subordinate confirmed it was. The boss then asked what the chances were of Dojin coming out alive, and the assistant replied that it was less than 1%. Even so, the boss began to laugh. He thought it was impossible that Dojin was dead. He said the fools at the association knew nothing about him. He was convinced that Dojin was awakened, someone far beyond what they imagined. The subordinate noted that even so, surviving a rift required more than just strength. The boss agreed. Fighting well and surviving inside a rift were completely different things. However, he mentioned that Dojin had 2 family members, which made the situation delicate. Instructing his subordinate, he ordered that both women from the family be protected for now. If Dojin died, they could sell their organs on the black market. If he survived, they could claim they had taken care of his family. Either way, they'd create an even greater emotional debt. Meanwhile, Dojin remained in deep meditation near the world tree. He had completely lost track of time. He had absorbed hundreds of immortal embers, which now allowed him to freely use the fire attribute in his mana. Moreover, his fire resistance had increased drastically. He was stronger, much stronger than before. After realizing this, he bid farewell to the world tree, thanking it for everything it had done for him throughout his journey. He knew he would never be able to see it again, but made it clear that if it were ever in danger and he encountered it once more, he would protect it. After that, Dojin finally left the rift. Upon returning, he noticed there was no sign of anyone within a 1-kilometer radius. Most likely, everyone had evacuated due to preparations for the monster wave. However, he soon sensed a slightly strong aura coming from a specific direction. Curious, he decided to check who was there, and upon observing the men's clothes, he recognized that they were the same ones from the last gate he had faced. If he were caught by them now, it would be extremely troublesome. To divert attention, Dojin threw a fireball onto a rooftop, drawing everyone's gaze to that house. He was impressed by the precision of his flame, and wondered if Kusak, known as the strongest fire mage on the entire continent, would be proud to see that power in action. Meanwhile, the men realized that the rift was disappearing before their eyes, which left them deeply shocked. The next day, the news spread quickly through the city. The newly formed rift in Mappo had simply vanished that morning. It had been 29 days since Dojin had entered it. The Hero Association, which had been anxiously awaiting a monster wave, was perplexed by the sudden disappearance of the phenomenon. Many wondered if the young man who had entered had died, but in truth, Dojin was walking among the crowd in disguise, keeping a close watch on everything. He knew that with the disappearance of the rift, he could never see the world tree again. Even so, there was something else he also wanted to protect. Elsewhere in the city, some loan sharks were celebrating Dojin's supposed death, claiming that now the little girl and the old woman belonged to them. They maliciously commented that although the old woman was nothing special, the girl seemed promising, and that the boss would certainly find a way to make use of her. At that moment, Dojin appeared before them, but the scene quickly shifted to the boss, who was celebrating finally being able to sleep peacefully, believing that the bastard was dead. He asked his subordinate, Kim Eon-gu, what the day's schedule was. Kim replied that there was a lunch with CEO Beck and another engagement at night. The boss then ordered him to contact Madame Kang to confirm his attendance at that location and ensure that all the new girls were well dressed. As he was climbing the stairs, one of the henchmen was caught off guard by a violent beating. The attacker was none other than Dojin himself, who demanded that the man crawl to him like a dog. With a cold expression, Dojin stated that people like him didn't deserve to be treated as human and ordered him to bark like a puppy. The boss, humiliated, began to obey, but even then, Dojin wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. He recalled how everyone acted submissively in front of him, yet plotted behind his back to stab him as soon as they got a chance. The man, named Huang Chang-seub, began begging for his life, promising to be Dojin's most loyal dog from that day forward. However, Dojin responded with a direct kick to his face and declared that from that moment on, the man with glasses beside him would become the new boss. He said there was no reason to keep serving a bastard who wasn't even human, and that getting rid of useless superiors meant nothing to him. The man then bowed before Dojin and warned that if he were to take over as the new boss, it would raise suspicion among the other members of the organization, since they had a very wide network. He begged Dojin to spare the current boss's life just this once. With an irritated expression, Dojin questioned why they were being so persistent. He said he could very well throw them all into a barrel and dump them in the sea, or crush them at a scrapyard, since that was his specialty. If they refused, he'd simply throw them into a gate to be devoured by monsters. Even so, Chang-seub kept begging. After thinking for a moment, Dojin extended his hand and said it was fine. The man, relieved, apologized and promised to serve him like an older brother. But with no mercy at all, Dojin completely burned his hand, charring it entirely, and warned that this would be his last chance. Before leaving, Dojin made it clear that from now on, if even a single scratch appeared on any member of his family, everyone there would be eliminated. He told them to take responsibility for protecting them 24 hours a day. The scene changed again. Officially, Dojin's existence had vanished along with the gate. Everyone believed he was dead, and if they discovered he was still alive, many problems would arise. Even so, Dojin believed Chang-seub would find a new base for him, and for now, he needed to stay hidden. Meanwhile, Dojin looked visibly excited, as his plans were finally beginning to take shape. Dojin told the little girl that she could now go to kindergarten, and that next year, she would need to start attending school like the other children her age. However, that news made Yoon-young visibly sad, which surprised him. Not understanding why, he asked her why she didn't like kindergarten. Her answer was sincere. The other kids mocked her, saying she had no mother or father. Hearing that, Dojin fell silent for a moment. Then, making a quick decision, he said she didn't need to go to kindergarten anymore, and could simply start school next year. The little girl was overjoyed by that. As he watched her smile, Dojin thought he might send her to a private school where no one would dare to bother her. The scene shifted. Dojin was questioning why his grandmother and a small child were staying in a motel. Manager Kim explained that the motel was actually a building constructed by their company and, in terms of safety, it was the best possible place. Convinced by the explanation, Dojin accepted the offer. When he entered the room, he was warmly welcomed by both of them, who said they were relieved that he had returned alive. As he thought about everything that had happened, Yoon-young asked if he was a hero. He returned the question, asking if she would like him to be, but the girl said no. She explained that heroes fought scary monsters and sometimes ended up dying. She and her grandmother preferred that he stay by their side for a long time. With that, Dojin reflected on his cruel past. He had been the only human to survive until the end during the fight against monsters. Many precious things were lost back then, but now something equally precious had appeared right beside him. In that place, maybe he could live in peace, protecting the small happiness he had found. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Korean Hero Association, a man asked if it was really impossible to get any information about what had happened. That man was Tai Wang, founder of the association and also director of the World Hero Federation. The woman he was speaking with replied that, so far, they hadn't understood anything. Tai Wang concluded that, if that was the case, the gate had disappeared on its own and maybe a new one could appear anywhere else. The woman agreed, saying that was a dangerous variable, and that, in fact, it would have been better if a wave had occurred. But Tai Wang warned her that the safety of the citizens was the top priority. It was revealed that Tai Wang was one of the 100 most respected heroes in the world. If he wanted, he could be elected president with the highest number of votes in history, easily defeating any national conglomerate. However, his only interest was public safety and preparation against new gates. The woman informed him that the owner of the house had agreed to sell it. Tai Wang asked them to offer a generous amount of money as comfort for the loss of a family member. She then commented that gates like that one had appeared simultaneously in other countries, which was unusual usual, she asked if the United States and China had already entered the control phase, but Taiwan replied that the biggest problem was in the United Kingdom, since the trustworthy heroes had been sent to other gates. That's when he received an urgent notification and couldn't believe what he saw. A gate wave had just occurred in the United Kingdom. Meanwhile, Dojun returned to the store where he had previously sold magic stones. The seller was startled when he recognized him as the one responsible for the earlier incident. The section chief asked if he had obtained the stones by force. Dojun ignored the comment and said he had brought many magic stones to sell, expecting someone higher up to show up and deal with him. However, the man rejected the deal and asked Dojun to leave immediately, claiming that the 1% commission represented a major loss and that they wouldn't do business with him again. But Dojun smiled, saying they would deeply regret that decision. The man explained that even the gate center worked with a 5% commission and that he had no interest in explaining anything to Dojun. He just asked him to grab his bag and leave. The moment Dojun revealed the magic stones he possessed, everyone in the shop was completely shocked. They recognized that these were hero-grade magic stones. No one could understand how that man had obtained such a treasure. It was then explained what these hero magic stones were. Once, a famous Mexican drug dealer named Kurzaman, while dismantling a magic stone to manufacture drugs, ended up activating its hidden power. He awakened as a hero, and since then, these stones became highly valuable. Known as hero magic stones, they were rare items used to awaken new abilities or enhance mana. They also served as a rare energy source, and were incredibly valuable commodities. Dojun calmly said that if they didn't want him there, he would simply leave. However, the man, desperate, asked him to sit for a bit longer. After some time, the manager approached and said that a 0.5% commission was a bit excessive. Dojun replied that if he wasn't interested, he simply shouldn't make the deal. The man tried to justify himself, saying it wasn't like that, and asked why Dojun had proposed that percentage. He said it made him feel bad, and in the end, he bowed, admitting he had been careless and apologized. But Dojun, unmoved, said he was tired of hearing apologies. He only wanted a direct answer. Would they accept it or not? With no way out, the man ended up accepting the offer. He knew those magic stones were so rare that any company would pay a fortune for them. However, just as the deal seemed sealed, Dojun stood up and said he no longer wanted to do business with them. Panic set in, and the man tried to renegotiate, offering a 9% commission, then 8%. He threatened that if their boss found out, they would certainly be killed. But Dojun remained unmoved, unfazed by his words. Faced with his coldness, the man lowered it to 7%. After a long negotiation, Dojun concluded by saying he would only accept 1%. And to make the value of what he had clear, he revealed that he still had 7 more identical bags. That terrified the two men, who ran to grab a contract and immediately signed for the 1%. With the contract signed, Dojun received 67 billion wons and realized that reaching 110 billion wons wasn't far off. Even so, he knew that obtaining high-level magic stones required more than just opening gates. If he could move freely through the gate zones, the task would become much simpler. That's when he saw the alert about a wave happening in the United Kingdom. In the past, he would have rushed there regardless of the country, but now his life was different. He then decided to take his grandmother and little sister out for a special meal. His grandmother thought the food was far too expensive for what they could afford, but Dojun reassured her, saying he had made a lot of money. Yun Young, excited, ate happily. He ordered 4 more portions for each of them. His grandmother worried about how they would eat it all, but he insisted they enjoy themselves and eat as much as possible that day. Encouraged, she tasted the meat and was amazed by the flavor. While the family was eating, Juyeon appeared and asked to speak with Dojun. Annoyed by the interruption, he asked if she was blind for not noticing that he was with his family, and said that if she wanted to talk, she should wait until they were done eating. Surprised by his boldness, the woman introduced herself as Juyeon, but he didn't even care about her name. Even so, she waited in the lounge area, which caught the attention of everyone around. After all, she was so famous that she deserved to be in the top 10 most attractive heroes in the world. While waiting, Juyeon remembered that 2 months earlier, Dojun had entered a gate and come out alive, something unheard of. She suspected he had awakened inside that gate. However, he was also known to have died in the rift that appeared in Mappo. How could he be standing there, alive? Just one look from him was enough to make her nervous. She wondered if someone who had awakened less than 2 months ago could really be a rank S. She compared him to the oil magnate Kampor, who took 5 years to reach that level. It didn't make sense. If Dojun wasn't a rank S, then he must have some other kind of special ability. After the meal, a man approached. He was Cheol Woo, and he mocked Dojun, asking how he had crawled out of that gate. He said he knew Dojun was a bug but didn't expect him to be a cockroach. Dojun completely ignored him and asked if the woman had business with him. He said he would listen to what she had to say, but asked her to take care of his family, pay for the taxi, and escort them home. He, on the other hand, had a debt to collect. Despite everything, Juyeon followed his instructions. Meanwhile, Dojun and Cheol Woo prepared to fight in the middle of the restaurant. The waitress tried to intervene, saying they couldn't fight inside, but she was suddenly struck by Chiel Wu's punch and fell to the floor. The moment he turned to attack, Dojin responded with a direct, powerful punch to his face. Dojin said that the man had taken him into the gate intending for him to die, and that now they had a lot to talk about. Furious, Chiel Wu called him a bastard and said that even his father had abandoned him. He claimed it was Dojun's own stepmother who had asked for his death. Upon hearing this, Dojun pulled out his phone and asked him to repeat it, as he was recording. Chiel Wu laughed and said he'd repeat it just once. He called Dojun's mother a whore. Even so, Dojun remained calm. He stopped Chiel Wu's punch with just one hand and then easily threw him far away. Dojun's strength left, Chiel Wu completely stunned. Meanwhile, the restaurant waitress cried desperately and called the police. But Juyeon asked her to stop, saying she would personally take care of the situation. She couldn't understand how someone like Chiel Wu, a rank B hero, had been defeated so humiliatingly. That indicated that Dojun was either a rank B hero or even higher. Even if he were rank A, it should still be difficult to handle a rank B like that. Something didn't add up. Juyeon approached Dojun and warned him that if he kept acting that way, he would end up dead. She then asked how much he knew about Chiel Wu. Dojun calmly replied that he knew pretty much everything worth knowing and asked why she wanted to know. She explained there was something important. Chiel Wu was the cousin of a rank S hero named Young Pyo, but Dojun replied that he already knew and didn't care at all. He commented that Chiel Wu only acted the way he did because of the influence of his rank S cousin. More seriously, Juyeon said that he was underestimating the gravity of the situation. It was dangerous to believe that Young Pyo would understand or forgive that fight. Even so, Dojun remained calm and remarked that her lack of knowledge about him was starting to get annoying. The waitress continued crying, saying Juyeon had promised to fix everything, but things were only getting worse. Juyeon then apologized for showing up unannounced. She said she was just doing a favor for her uncle and took the opportunity to make a proposal. She asked Dojun to sell all the magic stones he had to her, claiming she could easily afford them. Dojun smiled and asked if she really had enough money for that. She replied that the wealth of an S-rank hero was beyond his imagination. Even so, Dojun said he had nothing to sell at the moment, but he did have one condition. It was something simple, something she could easily do. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Dojun's stepmother, who was completely drunk, rambling incoherently. She said that everyone had claimed he died in that new rift. A man beside her commented that even the Hero Association had been fooled, and that Chiel Wu had been attacked in retaliation. The woman became concerned, suspecting that Dojun might know something important. If that information reached her father or husband, it could become a major problem. Even so, she believed she could cover up the whole situation. She knew that if everything was revealed to the media, stock prices would plummet. So, she decided that she needed to stop Dojun immediately. She ordered her subordinate to suppress his company as soon as possible. If anything leaked, everything would be lost. She also demanded top priority in silencing the police. Manager Lee responded that both the police and the media had already been silenced. He then informed her that Chiel Wu's cousin was actually Young Pyo himself. He explained that Chiel Wu was widely known as human trash, even among the heroes. Many believed Young Pyo cared about his cousin, but in truth, it was Chiel Wu who did the dirty work for him. If both the media and the police began influencing public opinion negatively, that would also damage Young Pyo's image, and there were signs that both of them had been acting from the shadows. Faced with this, the stepmother asked them to schedule a meeting with them as soon as possible. She wanted to know if Hwang Chang-sob had betrayed them, and Manager Lee confirmed it. He said they were helping protect Dojun's family. The woman then demanded they contact Prosecutor Park immediately. If they truly intended to abandon her, they would have to pay dearly for it. The scene shifted again. It was revealed that there were a total of 37 rift zones in South Korea. Among them, 5 were turning into gates, while the rest could only be accessed by heroes from the association. Dojun had entered one of those zones, using Ju Yeon's identity, thinking it was just a simple access point. Even knowing Dojun's reputation, the authorities were strictly checking all identities. That was when the leader of the Korean Hero Guild appeared. His name was Jong In-ju, an S-rank hero. He remarked that it was rare to see Ju Yeon around, and she replied that she was just bored. Upon hearing that, Juyeon recalled her conversation with Dojun, when he promised to sell all the magic stones at market price if she allowed him access to the virtual rift zone. However, she knew that wasn't the only reason. There was something else behind Dojun's decision, something she didn't fully understand yet. Even if it wasn't a direct request from her uncle, Juyeon knew she needed those hero magic stones, so she would do it for him. In-ju, the girl accompanying her, stayed close. Embarrassed, Juyeon explained that he was just someone she knew, but In-ju remarked that he was probably her boyfriend candidate. She quickly denied it, saying she was only returning a favor. However, before the conversation could continue, a monster appeared and attacked the group. Juyeon immediately told everyone to get into battle positions, but before she could finish the command, Dojun had already leapt toward the creature. With a single strike, he defeated the giant monster, leaving everyone in shock at the strength he had displayed. Even after the attack, Dojin noticed the monster was still moving, so he stomped its skull, ending the fight completely. Ju-yeon, shocked, asked who that man was, but Inju simply replied that he was someone strong. Seung-ho couldn't believe that simple explanation, saying that only a handful of heroes in the world could do something like that. Ju-yeon replied that even her sister could do it, trying to hide her astonishment, but Inju remained impressed. He didn't believe someone had destroyed a monster of that size with a single blow. Even Ju-yeon herself still wondered what that man's true identity was. Faced with the scene, she announced that plans had changed, and that she would visit the zone's core for a while. Meanwhile, Dojun was already ahead, extracting the magic stone from the creature's body, saying he wouldn't share it with anyone who hadn't helped. Ju-yeon, observing how easily he moved in that environment, asked if he was planning to go even further. That seemed to make him more excited. She said she knew the area's geography well and would lead the way. She told him that if he didn't want to get lost, he'd better follow her. So, the two began running. A man asked if they shouldn't follow them, but Inju responded by asking if he could keep up with that pace. The man, resigned, admitted he couldn't. So, they decided to stay where they were and continue hunting normally. Inju kept staring at the monster. Dojin had defeated and commented that, in light of that, A-rank heroes didn't seem impressive. He believed that man might be an S-rank too. While they ran, Ju-yeon was surprised to notice that Dojun was keeping up with her easily. He even asked if they could go faster. That startled her, since she was known as one of the two fastest people in Korea. Dojun teased her, saying she was slower than he had imagined. When they arrived, Dojun wanted to know what was at that location. Ju-yeon explained that it was the zone's boss monster, known as Kassarian, a monstrous beast 20 meters long that resembled a wyvern. She asked him not to try fighting it, saying it would take at least 3 SS-rank heroes to defeat it. But Dojun asked if defeating the creature would yield a high-grade magic stone. She confirmed and wanted to know if he was seriously thinking about facing the monster. But Dojun didn't even wait for the answer. He was already running toward the enemy. Ju-yeon chased after him, and when she caught up, witnessed something unbelievable. Kassarian, known for being nearly invincible, had been defeated in seconds. She couldn't believe it. That creature was so powerful that the first hero to defeat it was Park Hae-yeol, a famous S-rank known for hunting Kassarian. Even then, in his first attempt, he needed 30 A-rank heroes, all of whom died to the creature. Park Hae-yeol barely survived. He later gathered 1 S-rank and 200 A-rank heroes for a second attempt. Only after a long and brutal battle did they manage to defeat a single Kassarian. Even so, most of them died, and from that day on, Park Hae-yeol's guild never recovered its influence, even after more than 40 years. Dojun looked at Ju-yeon and said that she had no right to that magic stone, since she hadn't contributed at all. Even after seeing everything with her own eyes, she still couldn't believe it. The infamous Kassarian had been defeated with a single blow. Dojun then stated that from that point on, he would continue alone. He said he no longer needed a guide. Ju-yeon asked if he wasn't going to take the Kassarian's byproducts, explaining that besides the magic stones, there were valuable materials with academic importance. But Dojun replied that he wouldn't profit much from that and didn't care. He said it was more efficient to hunt other monsters to get magic stones. If she wanted, she could keep the byproducts for herself. Later, the adventurers who had accompanied the group were impressed to see Dojun returning the large backpack he had borrowed. It was filled with magic stones. Upon analyzing the contents, they realized it would normally take 3 days of intense hunting to gather that amount. Everyone began to wonder who he really was. Inju believed it wasn't just about speed or the number of items. After all, that man had defeated a Kassarian alone, without armor or special equipment. With that feat alone, Dojun could already be considered the strongest hero in the world. And soon after, he appeared with another backpack full of items. The other adventurers commented among themselves that even if they told everything that happened that day, no one would believe it. While Ju-yeon was talking to Dojun, the heroes watched from afar and wondered if they were flirting. Some even thought they made a good pair, since both were good-looking and incredibly strong. But Seung-ho thought it was strange to call that flirting, as Dojun treated Ju-yeon very rudely. To him, it was surprising that someone dared to act like that with her. What really made them indignant was seeing Dojun turn his back and walk away without saying a word. Inju wondered why he had left the backpacks behind, and Ju-yeon commented that if everyone found out he killed a Kassarian alone, he would become extremely famous. However, Dojun replied that he found fame very annoying and asked her to handle it on her own. Faced with that, Ju-yeon, blushing and clearly shaken, kept wondering what kind of man he was. The scene shifted to Park Hae-yeol, who was in intense training. A man beside him asked him to calm down, since he was destroying everything inside the guild. He said that the more he endured that difficult period, the more his reputation would grow. Hae-yeol admitted the man was right and said that way, he would get proper revenge. The other added that when the time came, everyone would kneel before the guild leader, and he would be known as the hero who defeated a Kassarian with the fewest people in the world. With that, his name would go down in history. Perhaps the Hero Association itself would grant him the exclusive hunting rights rights to the Caesarian. Yahello said no one in the world knew that creature better than he did. He still remembered that 3 years ago, his guild had drastically shrunk, but even so, he remained the only one capable of facing that winged monster. The scene then moved to Yongpyo's past with Dojin. During a mission, Dojin had been betrayed by his own cousin, Cheol-woo, who tried to trap him inside a gate to get rid of him. However, instead of dying, Dojin awakened. His client was Hong Hee-ju, administrative director of the T group and also the second daughter of the W group. Yongpyo couldn't understand why such a powerful and wealthy woman cared so much about Dojin, an illegitimate son of the T group, brought into the family only at the age of 7. Hong Hee-ju, in turn, had been expelled from her home after giving birth to her son 6 years ago. Yongpyo asked how much Cheol-woo had earned from that mission and heard it was 3 billion won. To him, that was too little considering Cheol-woo had come out completely incapacitated. The butler explained that his body was badly burned, he was blind, and on the verge of death. Furthermore, there were rumors that Ju-yeon had helped Dojin. Yongpyo was intrigued, wanting to understand why she had done that and what the relationship between the two was. The subordinate mentioned that thanks to Ju-yeon's testimony, the incident had been covered up, but Yongpyo ordered them to immediately find out what their relationship was and what deal they had made. After that, he stated that he was the only one capable of killing the winged monster. He believed that Hong Hee-ju would soon come looking for him, and as a woman from a conglomerate, she would surely have a lot of money. The scene shifted again to Dojin, who was reflecting while walking. For him, hunting in rift zones was much more efficient than dealing with gates. The problem was that he needed Ju-yeon's help to access that kind of zone, but he didn't want to become famous. So, he was thinking of another way to enter without drawing attention. For now, he decided to rest at the new house that Hwang Changseob had arranged for him. Before entering, he noticed several unknown pairs of shoes at the door. Upon opening the house, he realized that several people were waiting for him. His sister ran up to him, asking who those men were. It was then revealed that among them was prosecutor Park Cheol-yong, who asked if Dojun knew Hwang Changseob. He explained that Changseob was being accused of being part of the leadership of HCS in the capital, and of being involved in illegal high-interest loans. Therefore, an immediate arrest was ordered. The scene cut to Dojun sitting in a chair, already in custody. Park Cheol-yong was on the phone, saying that Dojun was just as obedient as Changseob. He thanked the caller for arranging his daughter's studies abroad, and stated that he became a prosecutor to remove trash like them from society. While reading Dojun's documents, he commented that the crimes committed by him added up to at least 10 years in prison, and with the data provided by Changseob, he already had more than enough evidence to secure a conviction. Dojun remained silent, just watching the man in front of him. After a while, he questioned whether Hong Hee-ju had really made the right decision, but the prosecutor, confused, didn't even know who that was. From the atmosphere in the place, Dojun assumed that Changseob's team had probably been eliminated. Meanwhile, the man in front of him demanded to know if Dojun thought a South Korean prosecutor was some kind of joke, claiming that his life was over. However, upon facing Dojun's threatening gaze, the prosecutor quickly backed away. At that moment, another man appeared and asked the prosecutor to step outside for a moment. Outside, the prosecutor looked at Dojun's test result and, confused, asked if the device was broken. The other man replied it wasn't. The hero measurement device showed a result incompatible with the information they had, which seemed impossible. The man suggested that maybe the information about his awakening was incorrect, but the prosecutor insisted that everything had been investigated by the T group, so there couldn't be a mistake. If Hong Hee-ju really was involved, then who exactly was that mysterious man? Meanwhile, Dojun was thinking about why South Korean prosecutors were called dogs. For a moment, he considered destroying everything around him and escaping with only his grandmother and Yoon Young to another place. However, before he could take any action, Ju-yeon appeared and approached him, asking what he was doing there. Dojun replied that he didn't even know himself, but Ju-yeon, noticing his emotional state, asked him to calm down. She knew how angry he was, but warned that if he used his power in that moment, the consequences would be severe. Dojun, intrigued, asked why she was helping him. Ju-yeon explained that she wasn't exactly on his side, but had discovered that he was completely innocent in that case. She said that if she hadn't known that, she might never have done anything. For her, seeing someone innocent being falsely accused was too much. Even so, she informed him that the Hero Association would begin closely monitoring him. They were keeping a close watch on the licensed hero IDs and on the new rifts that had appeared in the Mapo district. Still, Dojun didn't care about investigations. He just wanted to know if his family was safe. Ju-yeon, uncomfortable, said she wasn't his secretary to know that, but upon seeing Dojun's firm gaze, she ended up revealing that yes, his family was safe. Relieved, Dojun thanked her and promised to return the favor. She, a little embarrassed, asked him to hold on just a bit longer, as she would do everything she could to resolve things quickly. Over time, and thanks to a fair investigation, it was confirmed that Dojun had no involvement in the incident. Although he was still penalized for acting without a license, Ju-yeon's defense was so effective that the punishment resulted in only a suspended sentence. importance. Meanwhile, news began reporting the appearance of monsters never seen before in England. One of them was shaped like a 1.5-meter tall praying mantis, with 4 eyes and great jumping ability. Dojun remarked that it was probably a Macassian, which surprised Ju Yun, since not even the association had named the creature yet. It was then explained that monster names weren't given at random. Magic stones contained unique information alongside condensed energy, and by analyzing them, it was possible to discover details such as the monster's name in the current world. If identical creatures appeared both in the real world and the ruined world, then most likely their names would be the same. Dojun stated that Macassians could be easily defeated using the sap of red forest ants, which were harmless to humans but carried a highly effective paralyzing poison against those monsters. He said spraying that liquid would prevent them from going into a frenzy. From that point, Ying began to question who Dojun really was, leaving him silent. Shortly after, Dojun asked what would happen if he killed Hong Heju. Meanwhile, Hong Heju was so nervous she was biting her nails non-stop. She couldn't understand why Ju Yun had done all that. Manager Lee was also confused, wondering what the real relationship between the two was. Hong Heju, even more irritated, demanded an explanation for how Dojun's test result showed he wasn't a hero, even after the manager himself had confirmed his awakening. Lee then admitted that Dojun had probably awakened, but maybe had some ability capable of deceiving the measuring device. Consumed by rage, Hong Heju ordered them to contact Kang Young-pyo, who had asked for 20 billion, and told them to offer 30. Meanwhile, she called Young-pyo, who told his subordinate to ask for double the amount. She was desperate, and according to him, 60 billion won was nothing for that woman. Moreover, since Ju Yun was also involved and the possible opponent was an S-rank individual, the price needed to be much higher. The subordinate warned that Jeong was a dangerous person, but Young-pyo, sitting in his chair, scoffed and said not all S-ranks were the same. He believed he could easily defeat someone like Dojun if the association had already responded. However, his subordinate reminded him they couldn't raise the price too much because of the delicate situation unfolding in England. The association had already announced to the public that they were carefully selecting the heroes to be sent. Young-pyo, realizing there was nothing more he could do at that moment, asked his subordinate about the date of departure. He was informed that the flight would leave in 3 days and that the travel plans were aligned with those of the Japanese heroes. Still, Young-pyo said he needed to see Takashi, as he had unfinished business. He mentioned the Macassian, a new type of monster, whose weakness had not yet been recorded. Discovering that weakness could significantly raise the value of his assets, the scene then shifted to England, where the same monster was wreaking havoc in the streets. Local heroes were trying to stop it, but the battle was extremely difficult. After a long and intense fight, they finally managed to decapitate the creature. However, the victory was short-lived. New creatures emerged and attacked the remaining heroes, killing many of them. It became clear that the English heroes were doing their best to contain the monsters before they advanced southward, but without proper information, they were helpless. At that critical moment, the region's defensive line collapsed, leaving less than 60 kilometers to the capital, London. As the monsters marched forward, the South Korean heroes arrived by helicopter and sprayed a substance extracted from the red ant's sap onto the enemies. To everyone's surprise, the substance worked, defeating the monsters. Ju Yun was extremely surprised to see that it had actually worked. Then, all the heroes descended to finish off the remaining monsters once and for all. The scene changed again to a press conference, where several reporters praised Ju Yun's performance. One of the men present stated that she had saved England from total collapse. When she appeared, everyone tried to take photos, and the public's reaction visibly surprised Ju Yun. The overall feeling was one of gratitude, as the South Korean heroes had saved the country from ruin, and everyone was very proud of what had been done. From afar, Dojun watched everything unfold on a large screen. Later, Ju Yun brought him several gifts as a way of thanking him. When Dojun opened the packages, he realized the clothes he had received were extremely expensive. She explained that it was a fair trade for the help he had given her. Almost comically, she was practically becoming his sugar mommy. She even said that, compared to the help she received, those gifts were small, and added that if Dojun needed a car, she could buy one. Even knowing he wouldn't reveal how he discovered the monster's weakness, she asked about his future plans. She didn't expect to hear anything about world peace from that man, and suspected that if he was truly trying to eliminate certain targets, the consequences would be much greater than she imagined. But it was at that moment that Dojun replied that, before anything else, he intended to buy a house for them. The scene then shifted to a man in a house full of women. He was reflecting on how much Ju Yun had changed. She already knew the monster's weakness, but hadn't told anyone how she had discovered it. During the flight, he asked how Dojun had gotten out of prison, and she replied that Cheol Woo was the one who had started that fight. Besides, the man's attempt to kill Dojun through the rift had also failed. Even though both had fought that day, it was Cheol Woo who initiated the conflict. Yong Pyo, however, said that Cheol Woo deserved it, but he was still his cousin, and for that reason, he had the right to take revenge by defeating Dojun. Still, Ju-yeon simply lay down, saying he could do whatever he wanted, as she had no intention of interfering. Deep down, Yong Pyo felt that there was something very strange about Dojun. Once again, the scene shifted to England. It was one of the regions devastated by the monster wave. The British Hero Association was trying to collect as many magic stones as possible before the arrival of the second wave, as well as positioning a large number of heroes near the rift. One of the men commented that if they had the essence of the red flower ant, even D-rank heroes could defeat the monsters. Another added that if they had managed to stop the wave earlier, the place would have become an excellent source of magic stones. They also knew that a rift that had experienced a monster wave could no longer be used as a gate. Rumors said different monsters would appear in the second wave, and many countries had already been destroyed because of it. It was then they noticed something strange. It looked like someone was coming out of the rift, although only 5 hours had passed since the group had entered. Suddenly, a man emerged from the rift. He was extremely strange, with a face covered in scars. The mystery only deepened. The men immediately realized that the one coming out of the rift was not a hero. When they tried to alert headquarters, they were brutally levitated by the power of the mysterious man. One of them even tried to attack him with some knives, but it was useless. Using magic, the stranger easily suffocated the heroes. He then commented that 10 years had already passed, but he still hadn't reached even 20% of his full power. He began to wonder if he had failed in his mission to create a dimensional crack. But first, he needed to increase the density of his mana. With a devastating attack, he completely exploded the bodies of the fallen men, and declared that before advancing, he had to exterminate the weaklings still lingering there. The scene shifted to Paju, in South Korea. Dojun was surrounded by several underground monsters. By analyzing the holes around him, he estimated that about 26 creatures were hidden within a 100-meter radius. With that, he decided to test how long they could survive his attacks. Casting fire magic directly into the holes, he caused a massive explosion that wiped out all the monsters at once. Meanwhile, Taiwan was talking with the deputy chief and the vice president of the Hero Association. The deputy chief confirmed that Dojun was indeed a hero, but said he was very difficult to deal with. Taiwan pointed out that Dojun couldn't be measured by conventional hero evaluation devices, and the deputy chief admitted there was still no explanation for that. The vice president, on the other hand, criticized Dojun's behavior, saying he was arrogant and that if the Hero Association asked something, he would have to answer with transparency. The deputy chief explained that it all started with a malicious plan by Kang Shu, during which Dojun awakened his powers inside a gate, where he nearly died. After that, he retaliated against Cheol Woo, and managed to handle a new special rift map on his own. Although his actions were seen as excessive, no one could deny that Dojun's power was overwhelming. Taiwan acknowledged that he was a complicated person, but that only proved how talented he was. It was said that Dojun had applied for an official hero license, requesting to skip standard procedures because he had a sponsor. The name mentioned was a rank S hero named John, which shocked everyone present. Then, Dojun appeared already, holding his hero ID, officially recognized as South Korea's 8th rank S hero. He stated that with this, he could now hunt freely in the Rift Zone. Back at headquarters, Taiwan commented that Dojun was truly impressive, as he went straight to the Paju Rift as soon as he received his registration card. His productivity was also extraordinary. The vice president, however, argued that he had entered a level 2 rift alone, which was completely insane. The other two stared at him, and he went silent for a moment. Soon after, he said that if Dojun survived, his identity should be revealed and widely promoted, as he was a rare and powerful hero. The deputy chief noted that maybe Dojun didn't want that kind of attention. However, the vice president argued that announcing a new rank S hero during such unstable times would bring peace of mind to the public. Finally, Taiwan stood up, saying he understood both sides, but that he would make the decision to meet him personally. Meanwhile, Dojun had already killed several monsters in that rift, and was thinking that mana consumption was higher than expected. He concluded that he urgently needed a weapon. The scene shifted to the hero complex in Gasan, where Dojun handed his backpack to a man, saying he wanted to forge a weapon with that material. The man refused to help, saying there were no available reservations. Dojun, irritated, replied that the man hadn't even answered the phone, and was already saying there were no slots. He asked if the man was really the one who answered the call, and the man explained that he had already said the place was full. Without patience, Dojun grabbed the man by the collar, and asked if he was the owner of the place. Frightened, the man revealed that he was only the son of the owner. Dojun then demanded that he call his father immediately, saying he had come there by recommendation, and believed it was a trustworthy place. After some time, an older man appeared. His name was Cheol Guan, a master craftsman, and he asked who had recommended the shop to Dojun. When he mentioned it was Ju-yeon, everyone was impressed. Dojun then pulled some items from his backpack, revealing a rare fang from a giant black viper. The craftsman was amazed, as it had been many years since he had seen anything like that. Dojin requested a reasonably good sword to be made from the material. The craftsman asked if he wanted a longsword, but Dojin explained that stretching a non-metallic material like that too much would compromise its durability. With that, the craftsman suggested making 2 medium swords, but Dojin requested the fangs be connected into a single sword, and that its mana absorption capacity be maximized. The craftsman's son protested, saying his father was being underestimated, since his weapons already had grade 3 mana absorption. However, Dojin picked up one of the swords to test. He said it felt like something made by a 5th grader. When he infused it with his mana, the sword broke immediately. He declared that if they were going to make junk like that, it was better to just give up now. The scene returned to the rift, where Dojin continued exterminating monsters. Then, he came face to face with a gigantic creature. With a powerful fire magic attack, Dojin was able to easily incinerate the monster before him. Despite the victory, he acknowledged that maintaining a sword made of mana for long was a difficult task, requiring a lot of control and energy. However, that same difficulty had led to a surprising achievement. He had killed a giant cyclops. After the battle, Dojin collected the cyclops' blood and brought it to the blacksmith shop. There, he handed it to the apprentice boy, asking him to give the material to his father, the master blacksmith, to be fused with the sword. Without saying anything more, he turned around and walked away, confident that he had already gathered all the basic materials he needed. His goal was clear: to increase the mana absorption of his main weapon. Even with these advances, he knew he was still missing one essential item, something very specific that could only be found in one place. Thinking about that, he called Inju and mentioned Brazil. This left Inju extremely surprised. She, in turn, shared the situation with Juyeon, explaining that the association had decided to send heroes to Brazil. Inju confirmed the decision was real. According to her, both the Brazilian government and the association had given up on controlling the situation and planned to completely shut down the rift zone on a large scale. She also mentioned that the monsters in that region were especially violent, but in contrast, the magic stones they left behind were extremely valuable on the market. Still, Brazil wasn't the only violent place, and everyone knew that. Despite the risks, the payment offered by the association was high enough to convince their guild to join the mission. With that, Inju asked Juyeon to call that mysterious man. She believed he might be the rumored 8th rank S hero everyone was speculating about. It was almost certain it was him, since he had been by her side at key moments. Inju even remarked that it was no surprise, since they were a couple, and it had been very cute seeing them hugging alone. But Juyeon replied that things hadn't been like that at all. Meanwhile, the master blacksmith was reflecting on what had happened. He wondered how Dojin had known to use Cyclops' blood, as fusing non-metal materials was extremely rare and delicate. Even so, the combination had worked and would help in forging the sword, which, by his calculations, would reach about 180 centimeters in length. Dojin had asked for the sword to be made in the form of a two-handed weapon, but with an adjustable grip so he could also use it with just one hand. He specified that the ideal weight would be about 5 kilograms. The blacksmith found the request a bit strange, especially given the sudden formal tone Dojin used. That indicated the weapon was extremely important to him. The craftsman even questioned whether 5 kilograms wasn't too heavy to wield with one hand, but Dojin asked him not to worry about it and just say how long it would take. The answer was that the forging would take at least a month, and that the sword's mana absorption rate could reach grade 7. Dojin wondered if the weapon would truly be able to withstand his power. In the end, he simply asked the craftsman to forge the basic structure of the sword as planned, and then left. The blacksmith was curious whether Dojin would bring another rare material to improve the weapon even further, because even in its current form, it would already be considered perfect. A few days later, Dojin spoke to Juyeon, letting her know he would be using her car. Juyeon, annoyed, asked if he thought she was that insignificant, since he had just asked for something that cost nearly 100 million OM. But Dojin simply smiled, saying it was perfect, which left her embarrassed. She took the opportunity to ask what had happened at the Hero Association. Dojin explained that they were going to reveal his identity, but he had demanded payment in return. Since negotiations failed, the association refused. Juyeon remarked that he simply couldn't get along with anyone, and asked him to at least consider her position as his sponsor. But he simply shut the door in her face. Inside the car, Juyeon commented that the association was probably overwhelmed, as they were sending people to the Rift Zone in Brazil. She said that once things calmed down, he would definitely have another chance to speak with the president of the association. Dojin then asked if she was really talking about Brazil, and she confirmed it. She said they were truly going to shut down that part of the rift entirely. At that moment, Dojin leaned closer and asked if she was going too. When she confirmed, he responded that in that case, they would go together. That unexpected gesture left her even more embarrassed. Meanwhile, Yongpyo was negotiating with Heju, who was outraged at the absurd amount he was demanding. For her, it was beyond unreasonable. But Yongpyo insisted that it wasn't the time to be frugal with him. She countered, reminding him that he had already received 30 billion wons as an advance and and was now starting to push things too far. Realizing she might have made a mistake by hiring him, Hee-ju thought it would have been better to choose another professional. Even so, Young-pyo got straight to the point, saying that no one would accept her crazy request and that, out there were indeed people who would kill without hesitation if the price was right. According to him, her intelligence network was pathetic, and he confidently stated that Dojun was a rank S hero, the 8th in South Korea. Hee-ju, however, didn't believe it at all, saying it was just a trick to deceive her. But Young-pyo guaranteed he had paid a hefty price for that information, and if she didn't believe it, then all that was left was to wait until the moment Dojun appeared to kill her. He then turned to leave. However, Hee-ju asked him to wait, saying that if Dojun really was a rank S, she wouldn't be able to handle him alone. So, she agreed to pay more, as long as Young-pyo took responsibility for eliminating him. Smiling, he replied that next time, they'd better act like true business partners. Hee-ju said she didn't care about that, she just wanted the job done. At that moment, he received a message on his phone, saying she was lucky that day because a great opportunity to kill Dojun had just come up. The scene then shifts to a plane heading to Brazil, where several rank S heroes were en route to the mission, including a man named Jang Sung-ho, who had single-handedly elevated the P group to the top of the business world. Beside him was Park Hyul, a hero who, despite his fame, was going mainly for the money. His guild had shrunk drastically, and he planned to use that mission as a break, since his life had been quite turbulent. The reward was so high that even Young-pyo boarded the flight to Brazil. On the same plane, Dojun was traveling calmly, eating his ramen, completely relaxed. Soon, they would all land in Brazil. The scene then moves to the city of Sao Paulo. At the headquarters of the Brazilian Hero Association, the leaders were discussing the Korean team's arrival at the airport. It was excellent news, as Korea had been the fastest among all requested countries. They commented that the heroes hadn't even stopped at the accommodations and had already begun acting immediately, much like another country already present on site. Despite that, one of the leaders expressed concern about the possibility of the Korean heroes discovering certain confidential information. Another replied that no secret lasts forever, but that at least until the end of the operation, they should keep the situation under control. Among the most alarming information, it was revealed that the hero known as Moray, considered a national treasure of Brazil, had been defeated and killed by an unknown entity. The most troubling part was that, according to the black box footage, the attacker didn't appear to be a monster, but a person. They then began to question what exactly had happened near the Santarem rift. The scene moves to Ju-yun, who was attending a conference while also speaking with Dojun on the phone. He told her he was heading directly to Santarem, which deeply surprised her, since that was precisely the most critical and problematic rift zone in Brazil. The scene jumps to another part of the event, where a man explained that after 2 days of adaptation, the heroes would be sent to the rift zones in sequence. At the same time, the scene shows Ju-yun getting into a taxi. Young-pyo, upon seeing her, asked where she was going, since the event schedule hadn't even started yet. She replied that she had somewhere to be, and when he pressed further, she revealed she was going to Santarem. As she walked away, Young-pyo thought to himself that this was precisely the place the Brazilian Association had told them not to go. The scene then shifts to the outskirts of the rift zone in Santarem. There, Ju-yun, now next to Dojun, questioned why they were in that location, and why he seemed to be in such a rush. But Dojun replied that he had waited for her, and therefore, she was actually the one who was late. Even without fully understanding, Ju-yun insisted that he explain what exactly he was looking for there. Dojun explained that he was searching for the blue crocodile, a rare and extremely dangerous creature. As he walked with Ju-yun, some of the heroes following them only watched from a distance, surprised by his demeanor. Many couldn't believe that this man had enough authority to give orders, even to someone like Ju-yun. As the group advanced, the other heroes questioned whether it was really normal to enter such a high-level rift so quickly. However, with Ju-yun among them, they felt somewhat reassured. Everyone knew her abilities well, but they were curious about who the newcomer beside her was. At that moment, one of the heroes, smiling, remarked that not all rookies were the same, and if it really was Dojun, then he was probably a legendary level rookie. During the walk, Ju-yun asked if Dojun intended to close that rift zone, but he replied that his goal was only to collect materials, so there was no reason to seal the place. However, the calm moment was shattered when one of the heroes was violently struck by a monster. Shortly after, enormous creatures appeared in front of the group. They were much larger and more terrifying than anyone had imagined, even after seeing pictures and reports. The heroes hesitated, warning that it would be extremely dangerous to face them. But Dojun, showing no fear, simply asked them to get out of the way. He remembered the words of the old craftsman, who had warned that tearing out the blue crocodile's heart with his own hands would be an extremely difficult task. That was why the craftsman had lent Dojun his prized sword, forged with several rare materials. Holding that powerful weapon, Dojun advanced without hesitation. In a single move, with a speed almost impossible to follow, he sliced the blue crocodiles into pieces. The attack was so fast and precise that everyone froze, completely stunned by the level of strength he had shown. The scene ended with the heroes in silence, absorbing the impact of what they had just witnessed. To them, it was now clear, that man wasn't just strong, he was something entirely beyond the norm. The scene then changed. The group was camping, and everyone was impressed that Dojum had defeated the blue crocodile with a single strike. They couldn't even count how many monsters he had taken down by himself. One of the members remarked that, although it was supposed to be a secret, Dojum had also defeated the Catrice in the same way. This visibly shocked another hero, who said that Dojum was clearly not an ordinary hero. Meanwhile, Joyoung asked if he was done with the blue hearts, and Dojum replied that he was. As she could see, she grew curious about what he would use those hearts for, but soon realized he was grilling meat and asked what he was doing, since it didn't look like beef. Dojum explained that it was blue crocodile meat, which was perfectly edible, and even offered a piece to Joyoung. However, she was disgusted, complaining that they should have prepared enough food and questioning why they were eating that. Dojum, on the other hand, didn't mind. He calmly kept eating. Jo wondered whether it was actually edible, and Joyoung eventually grabbed a piece to try. Ino couldn't believe she was really going to eat it, but Joyoung justified it by saying that if Dojum had assured it was safe, then it was worth tasting. Upon taking the first bite, she admitted it was surprisingly delicious. Jo quickly turned to Dojum and asked what his secret was. Dojum, not quite understanding what she meant, was confused. Jo then wanted to know how he had managed to seduce the powerful June. After all, she was so innocent and had never been in a relationship, not the type to give her heart easily. She insisted. What was the secret behind their relationship, to the point of convincing her to eat monster meat? When he heard the word dating, Dojum drifted into memories. He thought of when he was 20 years old, of Lady Minsil Gran from the Coach Grin family, and of Luanda Rachuli from the Hachuli family. Finally, he remembered Veronica, from his old world in ruins. It was now clear that Dojum had a past full of romances. While he daydreamed, Ino asked if he was still listening, as he had seemed distracted for a while. When she repeated the question about the secret, Dojum replied, "Honey doesn't go looking for the bee." Jo was appalled, saying it was the cheesiest line she had ever heard in her life. The narrative then shifted to Sao Paulo. Some men were arguing, unable to understand why operations were happening so quickly when they hadn't even officially begun. The problem, according to them, was that everyone was following Dojum on that mission. Zhang asked whether there were any profitable monsters near Santarém, and as far as they knew, there weren't any. Another man confirmed he also knew of nothing. When they asked the Brazilians, the only answer was that the place was very dangerous. Zhang Pai concluded that if it involved Dojum, then it was bound to be unpredictable. At that moment, he received a call from Director Hong. When he asked what the problem was, she wanted to know if that bastard Dojum was still alive. Zhang Pi asked why she was so impatient and if something had happened. She explained that her father had seen the news that Dojum was ranked S and demanded that they bring him back home. Zhang Pai asked if that was the only reason she was so anxious, and she replied that it wasn't the time for jokes. He then assured her he wouldn't disappoint her, stating that Dojum would never return from Brazil. Hong replied that she liked the promise and hung up the phone. Zhang Pai then ordered them to contact Takashi and inform him that Dojum had moved to an isolated area, which would make it easier to act. Back in Santarém, Dion asked Dojum if he planned to head into the jungle, since there were extremely dangerous monsters out there. Dojum wanted to know what kind of monsters lived in that region, and Joyoung answered, lynxes. He was surprised to learn that these creatures were also there. Joyoung then asked if he already knew about lynxes, and he confirmed he did. She didn't try to stop him but handed him a pair of earplugs, explaining that if he heard a lynx's cry, his mind could be paralyzed. Dojum, however, refused, saying he didn't need them. Even so, Joyoung warned him not to underestimate the lynx, as the Brazilian Hero Association had issued a special alert about that creature. Nevertheless, Dojum entered the forest without hesitation. At night, as the group moved through the trees, a lynx watched them from above. The predator's gaze terrified everyone, and they immediately told each other to cover their ears. The only one who remained calm and without earplugs was Dojum. If you enjoyed this scene and want to see what comes next, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support means everything. See you in the next chapter.